Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast. Well, hello, everyone out there. Welcome to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. And my name is Amy Johnson. I'll be your host for today's show, episode 319 of the Canadiens Connection podcast, titled, quote, "It fuels me. Habs coach sounds off on critics." Ooh, sounds a little spicy. Sounds like it's going to be a good one today. And so I am pleased to be joined in the studio by my co-host, who happens to be the founder and president of Rocket Sports, Mr. Rick Stevens. Rick, it's going to be them strong words, fighting words.
There's a chill in the air. Yes,
and not just because it's autumn.
Yeah, we're a few days before Halloween, and natural for fall to be chilly, but it's getting a little chilly behind the bench of the Montreal Canadiens. The bloom is off the rose, and the first hints, and it's soft criticism, but criticism nonetheless about the Montreal Canadiens head coach, and his reaction. That's what we're going to be talking about today.
Really?
What do you got there?
You said you mentioned Halloween. So
what do you got?
I might have brought a Reese's peanut butter cup.
Don't those make...
And maybe some peanut M&Ms.
Wow.
Over here. I brought you a Twix.
Thank you. Yeah, I do like Twix.
It's okay. Full disclosure, I didn't
share.
Shut up. I brought you a Twix.
Oh, okay.
I didn't dress up. Remember we talked at the end of last week's show that maybe I would come dressed up, but that if I had to dress up, that Rick had to dress up too.
Well, I got out of that.
So I brought chocolate instead. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween to
everybody.
Everybody.
What's everybody dressing up for Halloween this year? If you're a Halloween costumer, or your pet dresses up, or your kid dresses up, send us a comment. We want to know what kind of...
Now, which did you see the Canadiens Halloween party costumes?
I haven't yet. No.
Yeah, I wonder which one fans like the best.
Ooh.
Yoel Armia in the astronaut outfits.
Okay.
He and his wife. Patrick Laine was interesting. The fishnet stockings over a knee brace. That was an interesting look.
That's a choice. What is he doing? Rocky Horror or?
Yeah. He was a nurse of some sort, as I recall.
Okay.
Yeah. There was some prisoners. Jaden Struble was, and Lane Hudson were prisoners. There was the Top Gun, which is Kirby Doc and Christian Dvorak.
Nice.
That look. I think for me, the best one was Brendan Gallagher. Nick Suzuki was a cowboy riding his own horse, and the horse was with him.
Nice.
Which was interesting. But the best one for me was Brendan Gallagher, who was dressed, I guess, as Chef Boyardee or a chef of some kind. I thought that was the best outfit.
All right, I'm gonna have to look these up.
Yeah,
I will do that. Well, it's all treats and no tricks today on the show. I promise. See what I did there? I have to entertain myself. You know that. We are going to have a very fun show for you today. We've got lots of things to talk about, including two very interesting games that the Canadiens played since the last time we all met. We've got a lot of roster news to talk about, injury reports to talk about, prospects to talk about. A lot to say about Ivan Demidov this week. Surprise, surprise. Want to get you caught up on some pretty fun things going on with the Laval Rocket. Also, of course, we're going to hear from Ken Dryden today because of after the Tribute to the Champions pregame ceremony that took place this week. We're going to talk about that a little bit in that dynasty era. And hear from Ken Dryden himself, some of the really great quotes that he had. And then we're going to have just a few notes, newsworthy things from around the Hockey League, National Hockey League, before we get to segment 2 and our big topic, where the Canadiens coach under pressure reacts to criticism. That's the big theme for today, is that Marty St. Louis was presented with kind of this concept of how are you handling the fact that there's starting to be grumblings about the Canadiens' performance at this stage and whether or not Marty is still the right coach to lead the team at this point. And so he had some very pointed things to say to sound off to any critics or doubters. We're going to hear from him. We're going to talk about just kind of how he's reacting to his first little bit of outside pressure that's kind of maybe got a less than supportive tone to it, let's just say. And then in our third segment, of course, we want to get you caught up on some great things that have come from our Rocket Sports team this week. We have some tremendous comments from our listeners and viewers this week. Shout out to our new friends and followers in our Hockey Buzz community. They've been very active this past week. We know that there are many of them who are now new listeners to the podcast, so we welcome you on board, and we're going to hear from some of them later, as well as a really great listener email that you've got.
From St. Petersburg.
St. Petersburg, yes. St. Petersburg, all the way in Russia. And yeah, so lots to get to today. Lots of fun, lots of different things to talk about. And that's the big thing that we want to remind you is that this is an interactive podcast. No matter if you are one of our readers, one of our listeners, or one of our viewers on our YouTube channel, we want to hear from you. Questions, comments, feedback, answers to our Canadiens Connection question of the week. It's a good one this week, by the way. You got to stay tuned for that. We want to hear from you. So the easiest way to do that is to send us a text anytime on the Rocket Sports text line. Just text us at 585-3ROCKET. If you're reading one of our articles on Hockey Buzz, then you can certainly leave us a comment in the forum on one of our articles, the comment section there on Hockey Buzz, if you've got a comment about the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment in the comment section below the video. Send us a message on social media. Of course, that's at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So many ways for you to get in touch with us, and that's really the crux of it, is that we just want you to reach out. We want you to be in touch with us, and we'd love to hear from you. So let's get started. Let's talk about some of those games that happened last week. Of course, last Saturday night, it was the Canadiens traveling to Long Island to take on the New York Islanders in what turned out to be kind of, it wasn't a barn burner until the shootout that went on.
It was fun.
Forever. Like, holy rookies, holy defensemen in the shootout. It was, unfortunately, Montreal ended up losing that game 4-3. It was the Islanders who finally prevailed in the shootout. But, boy, it was a kind of a nail-biting, edge-of-your-seat shootout. It was a pretty fun one. And I don't really care for the shootout.
No, I agree.
But it was a fun one to watch.
And even before, there was noteworthy events during the game. Cole Caulfield scored twice. Logan Mailloux with his first NHL goal. Kaiden Primo, up and down in that game, but much better than his first start. But in the midway through the game, midway through the second period, there was a shift, and a lot's been penned about the Canadiens' new defensive system, and we'll talk about that more in the second segment. But it was on full display in the game against the Islanders. The Canadiens were hemmed in their own zone for almost 4 minutes.
And Logan Mailloux was on the ice for that entire time.
Yeah, the ice time, I have it here. Logan Mailloux, 3 minutes and 58 second shift. Remember, that's shifts insane. Are 45 seconds or 50 seconds or so. 3:58. Christian Dvorak, 3:51. Oliver Kapanen, 3:43. And he broke his stick, which compounded the problem. Lane Hutson, 3:22, and Josh Anderson, 3:05. Of those 5 players, Kapanen, Hutson, and Mailloux, all not many games under their belt, and performed extremely well, I thought, under extreme pressure and fatigue. The other player on the ice, other than these 5, was Kaiden Primo, and I was disappointed in Kaiden Primo. Yeah, there was no goal scored, and the Canadiens made it through. But Kaiden Primo had at least 1, if not 2, opportunities to freeze the puck, especially one that hit him right in his midsection,
and get his teammates off the ice.
He could have helped his teammates and bailed them out. Disappointed in him here, but yeah, the good and the bad, both for these 5 guys who endured the long shift, and the bad, there's something definitely wrong with the Canadiens' defensive system that would keep them bottled up by the New York Islanders.
Well, if you thought you had some disappointments here and there in that game, then Tuesday night's game back at home against the New York Rangers, that was just a debacle. Completely dominated by New York. I mean, Sam Montembeault looked terrible to start this. Soft goals. He got pulled relatively early in this game. It was just this game was a complete disaster from top to bottom, I thought.
Yeah, Sam Montembeault, listen, he had 2 great starts to especially that 48 save performance opening night against the Leafs, but he's had 3 ordinary, if not disappointing, starts since then, and he looked awful against the Rangers. Now, the Rangers are a very good team. They can make a lot of teams look awful, but, Sam's got to make some saves. And he gave up 4 goals on 9 or 10 shots, and then was pulled at about the 11-minute mark of the first period. Kaiden Primo took over from there. But Sam Montembeault wants to, he wants to play He's played internationally. He wants to play in 4 nations and maybe the Olympics. I think with a young defense in front of him, he's got to show some leadership. And one of the plays that stuck out for me was that waved off icing, or however that happened with Struble and Mailloux on the ice. The linesman clearly had his arm raised for icing. Struble and Mailloux and Montembeault signaled to his defense in front of him that icing was coming. Mailloux and Struble let up, and at some point the linesman waved off the icing. Montembeault's he's not the most communicative on the ice. There's got to be, and this goes for the entire team. They got to communicate more, especially with so many young players out there. It was his responsibility to let them know that it had been waved off, and didn't, and it made the defenseman look bad. It made Montembeault look bad. It was just a mistake that shouldn't happen. Hutson turned over the puck. His mistake, but the goaltender's got to make that save to bail out his defenseman, and didn't. So it was a difficult game. New York looked very good. I like if you get a chance to watch the MSG coverage, it's quite good. But what I like most of all is Steve Valiquette, who's a very good analyst, and he runs his own data company and collects his own information and for his own business, and he's a commentator on MSG. His commentary on the Canadiens is that they play a very immature game, that it's like minor hockey, that it's a bunch of individual looking players who are trying to skate through the Rangers, that there was a lack of structure, and that would tend to be directed at the coaching staff there. Mm-hmm. So it was a tough week. Then with just not a game between Tuesday and Saturday, there was lots of time for fans to be upset and critics to come out. But there was also, on the positive side, an opportunity to have 2 intense practices, and the Canadiens did just that.
That's right. So that certainly leaves that leaves the Canadiens currently at 2-4-1 to start the season, just 5 points on the season so far. Not certainly hoping to bounce back on Saturday night and get things moving in the right direction. Don't forget to follow Rick's Twitter account at Rocket Sports. That is our main Rocket Sports Twitter account. So you'll get updates on games, both Habs and Laval Rocket and so forth, and other content that we put out all year long. So be sure you're following us there. Moving over to roster news, Yoel Armia, Christian Dvorak, and Mike Matheson, who is having a therapy day, as well as Justin Barron, who is day-to-day with an upper body injury, missed practice on Wednesday. And that's, that also turned into an ugly part of that Rangers game when late in the game, Jacob Trouba put a big hit on Justin Barron. He didn't get penalized for it. He didn't get any supplementary discipline for it. I personally, and you ask Nick Suzuki, you ask anybody in the locker room, on replay, it really looks like Trouba hits his head, makes head contact, not chest contact. It was a bit of a really scary moment, and just hoping that Justin Barron isn't going to be out for too long, and then he gets well again soon.
Yeah, Trouba has figured out how to play on the edge without getting penalized or a supplementary discipline anyway. But it was ugly. Mike Matheson stepped in, but it was Mike Matheson. So I guess the point here is that with the mixture of therapy days and injuries, the Canadiens are dealing with a number of injuries, and the ones that hurt most are on defense.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, Kaiden Guhle finally skated this morning, Saturday morning. He came out and did a little bit of work on his own. Looked like prior to Canadiens practice, but that's the first that he had been seen on the ice since he left. Since
9
last
days.
Week, yeah,
9 days he's been off, and I think. You can talk about the young defense. You can talk about a lot of Patrick Line out of the lineup, and all those are factors. But I think it's clear that Kaiden Guhle, the Montreal Canadiens, are really missing Kaiden Guhle. He started well. It looked like he was taking over that number one defensive position, and they miss him a lot. The wheels kind of fell off for real when he was out of the lineup.
Another one who also skated this morning was Juraj Slafkovsky. He's been out for at least a week with an upper body injury. Question mark as to what that actually is. But he finally also skated for a little bit this morning as well.
Yeah, it was in practice, remember, and went back and looked at the video. He took a shot, and then afterwards was flexing his arm and rotating his shoulder. So it could be a shoulder injury. We remember in the offseason that he did not join the Slovakian pre-Olympic games, and his reason then was that he was dealing with an ongoing back injury, and he wanted to be ready for the season. So whatever's bothering him, he'll be out for. Well, the Canadiens announced that he'd be out for a week, midweek. So he won't play against the Blues tonight.
Michael Pezzetta finally made his way into the lineup for the first time this season on Tuesday night in that Rangers game, finally making his season debut.
Mm-hmm. And he was fired up to get in the game. Yeah. Not much of a factor once the game began.
No, but neither was anyone else, really.
Okay.
I'll give him that. And so, and again, that's going to be kind of that's with Slafkovsky out. It created a way for him to draw in. So we'll see how long he stays in the lineup. I think you had mentioned that it's Sam Montembeault getting the start and goal. He'll
play against the Blues. Another home game, another start for Sam Montembeault.
And speaking of Arbor Xhekaj, he's also going to be drawing back into the lineup. Now, this has been a kind of a bit of a bone of contention for some fans. There are Arbor Xhekaj has some very dedicated fans, and there's a good contingent of them who get very angry when he's not playing. He's missed 2 games, but now with Justin Barron out of the lineup, it allows some space for him to draw back in. But Arbor Xhekaj has admitted in training camp that he needed to be stronger. He admitted after the first couple of games of the season that he wasn't happy with his own game. And there's obviously some work that needs to be done for Xhekaj. This isn't a new thing. It happened last year as well. In fact, last year he found himself in Laval for a little while to work on the things that weren't going the right way for him at the NHL level. Marty St. Louis was asked about Xhekaj's being a healthy scratch a couple of times and what he needs to work on, and he replied with this.
I mean, you should be worried about making some mistakes, right? He's not a rookie anymore. So you should be like, I got to be better. Very simple. But it's not like we nitpick everything he does, but he's got to be better. I expect Xhekaj to be a better version.
That's pretty direct from the head coach. Mm-hmm. You can't use the same excuses that you might for, a Lane Hudson or a Logan Mailloux. Arbor Xhekaj is not a rookie anymore.
No.
There are expectations of him. He got a new contract, and seen the same kind of errors. Had a bad camp, wasn't good when he was in the lineup, and St. Louis said he needs to stay alert. And needs to be much more consistent than he's been. Said we don't nitpick his game, but he's got to be better. And I think part of it is focus. Xhekaj is clearly upset and frustrated that he's not been in the lineup. And he was asked about, would you have liked to be in the Rangers game? And he made it, the usual bluster about, well, if I was in the game, Trouba wouldn't have hit Barron. And I'm marking on the calendar.
The next time
the Rangers are going to play. That shouldn't be his focus. He may not be in the lineup. He may not be in the NHL the next time they meet. He's really got to understand that, he's expected to do more than just be the intimidator, the fighter. He's got to hold up his end as an NHL defenseman.
Otherwise, someone else is going to come in and steal his job, who can fulfill all those areas. So we're talking about, the kind of some consternation with defensive performance or injuries to defensemen. There is a report, and we're not a rumor mill here. We don't usually get into the rumor thing, but there are some credible reports from credible journalists claiming that Canadiens GM Kent Hughes is starting to check prices on what it would cost for them to acquire a top 4 right shooting defenseman.
Yeah. And that's given the difficulties that the Canadiens are having. The right side is awfully young. But Kaiden Guhle was filling in on the right side. He's been missing. David Savard's play has fallen off a cliff. And you've got some very young Logan Mailloux, Justin Barron players. So LeBrun and Frank Cervelli and others are reporting that LeBrun said he's hearing around the league that Kent Hughes has been doing his due diligence and checking in on the prices. Now, the caveat is that trades at this time of year almost never happen,
right?
And that if they did, the prices would be really steep. The question I pose is, can they fix this issue by spending a 4th round draft pick? Why do I have that in mind? Well, that's what they got back for Jonathan Kovacevic, a veteran defenseman who was comfortable in the Montreal system and who was traded away in the summer to New Jersey for a 4th round pick.
And who's having a good start to the season. Yeah,
he is. And seems to fit right into New Jersey. So now LeBrun, I go back to Kent Hughes and him saying, we are going to leverage the media at every opportunity when he was first hired. And I think this leak is coming from Kent Hughes. This leak is coming from the Montreal Canadiens. That Kent Hughes is busy trying to fix the problem just to tamp down the
panic.
The panic. Yeah, it is panic. I think that's the most likely choice because he knows that he can't make a trade at this time of the year to fix the situation and stick to the philosophy that we're not going to make a short-term move and trade away a piece of our future. So take it for what it's worth. But if he's gathering information for a later trade, for a trade that happens, in early in the new year or by the trade deadline, well, that's the job of a GM to gather that information, and that process usually starts by American Thanksgiving anyways, so it's not happening too much earlier.
No.
What is happening is, I think, just letting the media know that, hey, I'm on the job and just calm down a little bit, Canadiens fans.
That's right. All right, well, let's switch gears a little bit and check in on the Habs prospects.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world.
All right, well, every week we do highlight a Montreal Canadiens prospect. This week, promise it's not Jacob Fowler this week. We did that 2 weeks in a row. And this week instead, we're going to switch. We're staying in the NCAA, however, switching over to the University of Denver and talking about forward Sam Harris.
Yeah, Sam Harris, a prospect that maybe is not talked about a lot. He was selected in the 2023 NHL draft, 5th round pick by the Canadiens. Played at University of Denver last year, 14 goals in 42 games, a good season, and is off to a great start. 5 goals in 5 games. He's added 2 assists, so 7 points in 5 games for the University of Denver, and he stuck out in development camp in a very good way. He is, not of great size, 5'11", 185, but he, you wouldn't know it. He plays very physically. He likes to go to the dirty areas. He likes to get physically involved. He likes to punish his opponent, and also has an offensive side to his game, and is having a very productive start. So we're going to keep an eye on him through the season, as we do with all the prospects, but just thought that he deserved your attention this week.
Well, we are also going to bring your attention to someone who we have been keeping a very close eye on week to week, and that is young Ivan Demidov, playing over in the KHL. Boy, did he have a week on him this week. 4 assists, not over the week, in one game against Kunlun Red Star, making him the KHL Rookie of the Week for the second time this season already, which is just crazy. I mean, when this kid does get on the ice, he does some pretty incredible things.
Making the most of his opportunities, for sure. Mm-hmm. He has a 5-game point streak underway. And as you said, a tremendous game against Kunlun Red Star. And again, the coach feels like he has to respond, I guess, to Canadiens fans. And he said that he's feeling pressure from both the Canadiens fan base, but also that he's, where's his quote here? "We're considering the opinions of our colleagues in Montreal." So we heard and we reported last week that the Canadiens have been in touch with the organization, with SK St. Petersburg. But he says, Rotenberg goes on to say, he says, "We're considering the opinions of our colleagues in Montreal, but we are focused on our own needs, our own tactics, and how our players are feeling." So we heard you, but we have our own priorities here. He goes on, and we heard Jeff Gordon say that there are 35 players on the, on the roster. And Rotenberg said there's a huge competition for a spot in our lineup. The fact that Evgeny Kuznetsov and Tony DeAngelo play for us speaks volumes. To beat out these veterans, I don't know why DeAngelo comes into it, but to beat out these veterans for ice time, you have to push hard in practice. You just can't rely on your talent. So he's talking about not only being talented, but having to work hard. And that's, we're going to have a comment a little later that we received by email of someone that's seen Demidov up close and personal, and will offer their perspective.
The whole thing is fascinating. And to make things even more interesting, I mean, this has not just been a topic of conversation for Canadiens fans. This has been kind of a league-wide focus. It's picked up steam everywhere. And in fact, on Hockey Night in Canada last week, Elliot Friedman had a whole segment about this topic, talking about the fact that Kent Hughes and the rest of the Habs brass are actually planning to go to visit Ivan Demidov in Russia soon, but also said this is allegedly always been the plan to do this at some point this season. It's not a knee-jerk reaction necessarily to what's been going on with his ice time.
But it's just convenient that it
yes.
it can take care of that too,
to say the least.
As Friedman said on 32 Thoughts, I think the Canadiens are really trying to be careful with their language. I don't think they want to be seen as provoking anyone, but they're going to see him. Now, it's one thing for you to make a call and check in and politely say, "Hey, we'd like to see our guy do this or play that or whatever." It's a whole other thing when the Montreal Canadiens show up in your building. And so is it subtle? No. But we don't know when it's going to take place. Friedman said whether it's weeks or months, it's going to happen rather soon. So we'll see what effect that has. It might have had an effect already, just announcing the fact that, or just Friedman reporting the fact that the Canadiens are coming. There seems to be an uptick in ice time a little bit.
All a coincidence, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Switching gears to Habs prospects at the AHL level and the Laval Rocket. Things just keep cruising right along for Laval. If you let's put it to you this way. If you're frustrated watching the Montreal Canadiens, grab a Flow Hockey subscription and watch some Laval games because they are currently 4-1 on the season. They are 8th in the AHL. They are near the top. They are second in the North Division, only trailing Toronto. The Marlies, well, this could have changed because I haven't checked it in a day or two, but the last time I looked, the Marlies were the only undefeated team left in the AHL. That's the only team in the division that Laval's got to get in front of. Last Saturday, they played the second of their back-to-back against Syracuse. Much tighter game between the two teams than the free-for-all that the Friday night game was. Laval winning this one 1-0, but that wasn't small peas because that single goal that was scored by Owen Beck, scoring his first pro goal. Connor Hughes was the netminder in the crease. That was his first AHL shutout. Philip Meshar was an assist on Owen Beck's goal. It was still an impressive win against the Syracuse Crunch. They then head off for the rest of the week for practice. They did not have a midweek game, and they played last night, Friday night, the first of 3 consecutive games that they'll play against Utica. Last night was played in Laval at Place Belle. They'll travel to Utica on Saturday night, and then Utica returns on Wednesday. It could have been a blowout. Utica has not yet won a game this season. Utica's at the opposite end of the spectrum. They were 0-4 going into the game. And it looked like Laval was going to handle them easily. However, Utica did come back in the third game, third period, made it a little interesting, but Laval ultimately staved them off 1-4-3. Joshua Waugh's been hot. He's had 3 power play goals this week. The only thing to be concerned about was that in the third period, Philip Meshar left the game with an apparent injury, did not return, and he did not travel with the team last night to go to Utica. So we will keep an eye on what that means and what's going on with Philip Meshar. Hopefully it's not too serious, but that is where they are at currently.
I sure like watching Jakub Dobeš in net.
He's a funny guy.
He's
very good. But
he's very good.
Guy.
He's very strong. He's very powerful goaltender. But he has a personality, and especially when he comes out of the net to retrieve the puck.
Yes,
he's a very interesting goaltender.
He is. Before we move away from the Laval Rocket, just want to mention it was kind of an underrated thing that you might have missed this week was the Trois-Rivières Lions. Yes, that's the ECHL affiliate of the Canadiens, announcing that the Canadiens had sent Jacob Perreault from Laval down to Trois-Rivières. He actually played on Friday for the Lions, had an assist in that game. But the key part of that is that the Montreal Canadiens were the ones that sent him from Laval to Trois-Rivières, right?
Well, Chris G., who keeps an eye on these things for us, just noted that Laval didn't make the announcement, and some of this was just on the transaction page. But kind of curious. And if you're wondering who's Jacob Perreault, well, he was acquired last March from Anaheim for Jan Mysak. Jan Mysak needed a fresh start. I guess both players needed a fresh start. Mm-hmm. Mysak, he seems to be doing quite well playing for the San Diego Gulls in the AHL. Perreault, he needs to go a level down to the ECHL. And that happened this week. In the game on Friday, he played his first game in the ECHL and picked up an assist.
And so just to round that out, the reason why the Canadiens were the ones who sent him from Laval to Trois-Rivières is because when they acquired him in the trade, he is actually, this year is the final year of his ELC. So it's the Canadiens who are the ones who have to send him wherever they are going to go. So he is in the last year of his entry-level contract. Speaking of Trois-Rivières, they had they at least got a point when they played Worcester on the 25th. They did take it to overtime, but unfortunately, they did not come out on top with that one, losing that one 4-3.
So slow start, a loss and an overtime loss for the Lions.
Don't forget, we talk about Canadiens prospects on our Rocket Sports YouTube channel. Go to InsideTheCanadiens.com, hit subscribe, and we'll be sure to keep you in the loop on Canadiens prospects. Want to switch gears now, get to some quotes of the week, which were pretty special when you've got Ken Dryden delivering your quotes of the week. On Tuesday night, the Canadiens held a special tribute to the champions pregame ceremony where they honored the members of the 1970s dynasty when the team won 4 consecutive Stanley Cups. And it's always, those are the ceremonies that I think that the Canadiens actually do very well, is when they get some of these really special groups of players together. And it was certainly a who's who at the Bell Center on Tuesday night.
15 players. And you have names like Ken Dryden, Bob Gainey, Guy Lapointe, Serge Savard. And you look up in the rafters and you see those retired
names,
numbers.
Yeah.
They are the legends. And they were in the building. But it's also a reminder, been a long time, the 45th anniversary of the 1979 Stanley Cup victory that culminated in those 4 consecutive Stanley Cups. And we refer now to those late 70s, those late 70s teams as a Montreal Canadiens dynasty.
Mm-hmm. And Ken Dryden, speaking on the ice at the Bell Center pregame, talked about how the way that they were able to accomplish that level of greatness was because of them being made up of a team of bests.
Be surrounded by the best, to be the best. It almost never happens, but it did happen. The best ownership, the best general manager, Sam Pollock, the best coach, Scotty Bowman, the best assistant coach, Claude Ruel, and the best players.
Now, he goes on in French to say the best arena, the Forum, and the best fans in the NHL. And I thought it kind of sends chills when you think about it. Because it's a very different mindset than the Canadiens have. We remember Marc Bergevin saying, just get into the playoffs and anybody can win, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And back then it was, you had to have the best. This was pursuit of excellence, and merit reigned. And Ken Dryden said, it almost never happens. It certainly doesn't happen much anymore. We had the best of everything. We brought together, the Canadiens organization brought together the best of everything. If you think of the best GMs in NHL history, Sam Pollock's in the conversation. Is Scotty Bowman not the best head coach in ever in the NHL?
I love the fan in the middle of that yelling, Scotty!
Yeah. And the arena was considered state of the art back then. The best ice, it was the best ownership. And now if you go through and you be objective, you put your fan hat aside a little bit. Do the Canadiens have the best ownership in the league right now? Certainly, the Molson family and Jeff Molson is has a franchise that is valued at billions of dollars, and they're making tons of money. But do they have the singular pursuit of winning a Stanley Cup? I know Jeff Molson says I'm the only Molson not to win, but is it the singular pursuit? No, there's other. He wants his business. He wants to have a community francophone component. He wants environmental awards mean a lot to him for the Bell Center. There's the focus is distracted. Do the Canadiens have? There's big fans of Marty St. Louis, but is he the best coach in the National Hockey League right now? No. When that conversation happens, no. Is he the right coach for the time? Maybe, but is he the best coach? No. Do the Canadiens have the best GM right now? I think, the jury's out on that. I think that Gorton and Hughes have been making some right moves and moving in the right direction. Do they have the absolute best of everything? I think that's the answer has to be overall no right now. And that's very different from a team that was considered a dynasty.
That's right. Ken Dryden went on in that pregame speech to then describe a bit what it meant to have a Montreal Canadiens brand of hockey.
For 4 years, we almost never lost. Not during the regular season, not in the playoffs. We needed to win. We loved to win. And we needed and loved to win the way the Montreal Canadiens win. In the best way hockey is played.
Said in cadence, said in words that only Ken Dryden would say. But yes, the Canadiens of that era had an identity, and it was an intimidating identity. They defined how hockey was played, the best way hockey is played, according to Dryden. And as a result, they almost never lost.
Now, interestingly, then there was also a media availability in the Bell Center press room with the legends who were there. Ken Dryden, of course, spoke to reporters in one of the scrums, and that's where he was able to, he kind of get a little poignant and think a little bit about the amount of time that has now lapsed, not just since the last time the Canadiens had a dynasty, but just even since the last time the Canadiens won one singular Stanley Cup championship, and what it really, in his opinion, takes to become a legendary group of Canadiens.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, that's the first part, and it's amazing that there has not been a Canadian team that has won a Stanley Cup in 31 years. I mean, that is beyond belief. The thing that and I mean, you can do the math probably as fast as I can, but from 1956 to 1979, which I guess is probably 24 seasons. The Canadiens won 15 Stanley Cups in 24 years. Before that time, the Canadiens were not the legendary Canadiens. I mean, they were good very good perhaps in the early 50s. But before that, they were another team. And it was really starting in the early 50s, but hitting their stride after in 1956 on. That's when the legendary Canadiens became that.
So this question, the question that resulted in this answer was about the Canadiens not winning the Cup for 31 years. He said it's beyond belief. It's beyond belief that that the Canadiens haven't won, and it's beyond belief that no team in Canada has won. And then he moved to a bit of a history lesson, and I think it was an excellent point and good to be reminded of, because many fans, maybe NHL fans, think the Canadiens have won so many Stanley Cups because they've been around for over 100 years. They've been around a long time, and so you accumulate Stanley Cups, and it was easy in the early days and all of that. And I thought it was a really strong point he made, that 15 Stanley Cups came in the 24 seasons between 1956 and 1979. Before that, he said they were another team. They were just another team. But between 56 and 79, they became the legendary Montreal Canadiens. And why was that? Because they were devoted to hockey excellence. And listen, this is a different time, and there's more teams, and there's more dilution of players, and there's salary caps. And you can make all the excuses you want, but I think the thing that is missing from the current Montreal Canadiens is that devotion, that singular devotion to hockey excellence. It's tough winning a Stanley Cup, but it's even tougher if you've got mixed priorities. And as far as salary caps, I mean, there's no salary cap on non-players. They can bring in the best. They make a lot of money, and they can bring in the best of everything around the league. And I think it was a good point for Dryden to remind fans of why they were successful and why they became the legendary Montreal Canadiens.
Hopefully someday they can be a legendary team again. Hopefully sooner rather than later. Okay, we have some news and notes from around the hockey league. Believe it or not, there is still an unbeaten team in the NHL. And yeah, you would be happy to hear that it is your 7-0 Winnipeg Jets that you like to root for as well. They will be taking on this. If there was not a Habs game on Saturday night, I would be tuned into this one, because Winnipeg trying to go 8-0 to start the season, playing the Calgary Flames. So an all Canadian matchup. I think that's going to be a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, I'm Canadians first, but I think if you're in Winnipeg and you've lived in Winnipeg, you know that that a lot of fans there. Prior to the Jets, they had the Canadians in their heart, and it's Canadians over Jets, even for those people that live in Winnipeg. Many of them, not many of them. Yeah, many of them.
Many of them. Also, the Four Nations Cup jerseys were unveiled this week.
Yeah,
I have some thoughts.
Okay.
Well, they're not mostly relatively Canada's. No. Okay, since I'm the American on the show, I'll start with the USA's jerseys. I don't like them. Not really. Sorry. Canada's are just meh for me. They're okay, but I don't know that I love them. Finland's is pretty good, but I really like the Swedish jersey. There is the promo pictures they put out. There is the lettering that's stitched onto all of the sweaters has like texture in it, the actual letters. And so the SWE on the Swedish jerseys that in navy blue, the texture that they've got in it, it's a very pretty sweater. It looks really nice.
So you should know that, I mean, this is, we're talking about jerseys here, so a bit of a soft story. And I had a choice between the Four Nations Cup unveiling of their jerseys and the fellow in Gatineau, Chelsea, Quebec, 25-year-old guy, Zamboni driver, who was arrested this past week because he was driving a Zamboni, and there's video of it, while dressed as a kangaroo. Right. He was intoxicated and he crashed the Zamboni. So I left that story aside and went to the jersey reveal. I like the Canadiens, the Team Canada jersey. It's got that vintage look. All the jerseys have that vintage look. What bothers me is, did they need to put a Rogers
on the shoulder?
I mean,
no. It takes away so much from the jersey.
On the USA jerseys, I like the boldness of just the USA on it. Maybe the Finland jerseys are just the gradient on the
color's not. That's what I don't like about the Finnish jersey is the color. the tone of the color of it. Otherwise, I like that they went with the Suomi with the lion crest at it, but I don't like the colors.
But for me, I'm going to agree with you that the Swedish jerseys are my favorite. They look sharp.
Yeah, they really do. There was some contracts signed this week as well. For the Rangers, Alexis Lafreniere signed a 7-year extension, $52.15 million. Average annual value of $7.45 million. Kind
of a nice story because it's no secret that he had a slow start. Lafreniere, that is, had a slow start to his career, and there was a lot of people talking about, was he a draft bust? And he had a slow start, and then he's been progressing steadily, and the Rangers are making him a big part of their future, and he's playing well. The fact that one of the New York Rangers analysts, very famous one, is comparing him to Jean Beliveau. Says Big Al reminds him of Big Jean. Which,
all right.
Yeah,
that's a statement to make.
Yeah. I don't know. That's poking the bear there a little bit.
It is. So congrats to Lafreniere on that. And an even bigger congratulations to Paul Maurice. The Florida Panthers announcing this week that they have signed him to a multi-year contract extension. They know what a gem they have in Paul Maurice. It's no secret that us here on the show are very fond of Paul Maurice's coaching style and coaching abilities. Also big supporters of his assistant coach, Sylvain Lefebvre. They did a tremendous job with that team. Winning the Stanley Cup was just icing on the cake, and congratulations to Paul Maurice on a well-deserved contract extension.
Paul Maurice, his experience, he has seen it all, and he's able to deploy his players and inspire his players in a way that many other coaches can't. His communication skills are excellent. He's smart. He's quick. He's witty, and he uses humor both with his players and with the media. And he was the right coach for the right time. And the other thing is he surrounds himself with excellent people and people that fill in any gaps that he has in his own experience.
That's right. So congratulations to him as well. All right. We are going to take our first break here on the Canadiens Connection podcast. Coming up in the next segment, we've got your Canadiens Connection question of the week, which is directly related to our big topic that we're going to cover in the next segment, where we talk about how Marty St. Louis, the Canadiens head coach, under pressure this week has reacted to his critics and doubters. And so it's going to be a lot to get into. So we are going to get to that next. But first, we're going to hear from our sponsors over at DraftKings. I'm finally going to eat this Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, and you're going to want to stay with us to check all of that out. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
The quest for the Stanley Cup starts now. The puck's dropping on the 2024-25 season. Get in on all the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking your favorite team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers, bet just $5 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice. Copyright NHL 2024, all rights reserved.
Welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. My name is Amy Johnson, and of course, you can find me on Twitter at FlyersRule. Come on over. Follow me for Canadiens and Laval Rocket coverage. And of course, with me in the studio is our president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. As I mentioned in the last segment, you're going to want to follow him on Twitter, X as well, at Rocket Sports. You can also follow this podcast at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And of course, if you're a relatively new listener and you want to catch up on some of our past episodes or see what we've done for more than 300 episodes over the course of this podcast, well, then you can check out our full archive at CanadiensConnection.fm. Just remember, no matter how you are consuming this podcast, whether you are a podcast platform listener or if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe. All right. Well, this segment is going to be interesting. You know, Marty St. Louis plucked from behind the bench of his son's minor hockey team a few years ago, thrust right into the spotlight as head coach of the NHL's, what do we say in the opening of this show, the NHL's most storied franchise, the Montreal Canadiens. Really stunned a lot of people at the time, including fans and hockey insiders. But, you know, over time, Jeff Gorton, Kent Hughes, the logic of why they went with Marty St. Louis, employing an inexperienced coach, but one who could be very inspirational, particularly to younger players, has certainly been very appreciated by fans and commentators. He's endeared himself to a lot of people around the hockey community, Rick, really.
He has. And, but he's you know, there was that initial shock, but I think after that, there was a lot of appreciation for his playing career and the experience that he went through, that he was local, that and how that and the people that had doubted him as a player, you know, shouldn't dare doubt him as a coach, because he'd find a way. Mm-hmm. So I think that that Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes knew that as they were going through a rebuild, that there would be difficult times. There would be difficult times for fans. There'd be difficult times for the players, and keeping up that motivation of coming to the rink. And it was Marty St. Louis with his inspirational messages that made it fun to come to the rink. He always made practice fun and games fun, and I think that fans then understood what this rebuild, that patience was going to be required, but that the teams would be fun to watch in the interim. Now, you know, that has changed, and it should change. There was raised expectations. One, because you can't go on. Fans can't go on starting out at the beginning of the season saying, okay, you know, tank for a draft pick. They have to have more than that. Their patience has been exhausted. And the good players on the team, you can't keep expecting Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield and Juraj Slafkovsky to play for another high draft pick. That there has to be they want to play meaningful games, and that's the message that came out at training camp. We want to play meaningful games in March and April. And, we know that there was many meetings and what was going to be the theme for the year. And they had focus groups and they crafted a message that said, we're going to be in the mix. And everyone came out and said it in the same voice, at the golf tournament in the beginning of the season. We want to be in the mix. And it was funny because there was, what does that mean? What does being in the mix mean? And we had some listeners who said, oh, you're being, obtuse. Of course, everyone knows what it means. It means that they're going to be in the playoffs this year. Well, if that was the case, then why didn't they say that?
Right.
They were intentionally vague about this in the mix phrase, because they knew it would mean something different to fans. It would mean something different to their players. It could be interpreted however the individual wanted. Mm-hmm. And, by the end of the season, if they did not make the playoffs, they could say, well, we didn't say we wanted to be part of the playoffs. We just wanted to be in the mix. We just wanted to be playing important games. And so that was very intentional. But it raised expectations. And Marty St. Louis recognized that it was going to be different for him this year. That it wasn't all going to be about development. It was going to be about results too. And he's been able to make to explain the losses in the past by saying, well, we're working on this, we're working on that, I'm developing young players, we're developing for the future. But he acknowledged that this season was different, that results were going to be expected, and that because of that, he was gonna face some criticism for the very first time in his NHL coaching career.
Absolutely. And so now that it's come, because he's had, yes, there were as we talked about here, when he was first hired, there was a lot of the shock of, wait, what? This was the choice you made? So there was that kind of criticism, but that was more criticism towards just questioning the decision that Gorton and Hughes made. And people just completely unsure of whether or not Marty St. Louis had the capability to be an NHL head coach or not. But this is now he's getting the first taste of criticism about his actual capabilities and his job performance. And how is he reacting to all of that? Well, since it has started to, kind of rise in temperature a little bit, the rumblings and grumblings around pundits and fans and so forth, well, naturally, the media brought that to him this week as well, and this was his first real reaction to it.
Obviously, the noise, right? Is that what you're saying? I don't listen to stuff. And I'll tell you why I don't listen to stuff, because why would I listen to a critic from somebody I would never go for advice for? Okay? So just to start there. But I know what you're saying. And it's funny because yesterday I was walking to the Bell Center going to work, and like I say, I don't listen, but there's a couple fans that stopped me and they said, hey, don't listen to them. Keep working. So I realized, oh, okay, this is happening, right? It's part of the market, but it's not going to change what I do, and it's not going to make me upset. But if it does one thing, is I'm almost thankful, because I usually overcome the obstacles and the people that doubt, and it fuels me. So I appreciate the market.
There's a lot there.
Woo.
There's an awful lot there. First, for our listeners, and I think for people who have been with us for a long time, they know that we try to have adult conversations around here. We have honest conversations. And, if you're interested in only positive things about someone or negative things, you're not going to get that here. We're going to give an honest appraisal because, this isn't about, okay, we say negative things. Oh, you're a hater. Oh, we say positive things. Oh, you're a cheerleader. As Marty said this week, there's a lot more gray in hockey than black and white. So we're going to talk about his good qualities and his not so good qualities. And I think, the business about being fueled by doubters, that connects right back to his playing career. And that's something that he's dealt with. And
he's made an identity out of that.
That's his identity. He looked at the end. Now you're not seeing this, but if you watch the clip, he looks, it's a smugness, but it's also a defiance at the end. And the beginning part where he says, "I don't listen," I can guarantee you he listens. He listens to what's said. He won't admit it.
No.
But we know, and we have, it's been clear, not just recently, over the years, that he listens pretty directly to what's said about him. He has an ego. There's a bit of vanity there, and he likes all of the enthusiasm and the adulation and all of that. And he doesn't like when people criticize him. And he's been pointed before. He's been sharp towards reporters who have written things about him that he didn't like, and about messages out there.
And to be fair, if I can just interject one thing here, when I just said it has been his identity since he was a player to defiantly prove wrong his naysayers. Well, that can't be your identity and also be a person who doesn't pay attention to the noise, because the noise is what's fueling you to want to prove them all wrong. And when that really has been his identity of I want to prove everybody wrong who says I can't, well, then that means that you're paying attention to what they're saying. And so that's why I agree with you that fine, he doesn't want to admit that he pays attention to the noise, good, bad, and indifferent. But I agree with you in saying that I tend to think that he does kind of keep his finger on the pulse of what people are saying.
And why does this matter? How does it relate to his coaching? And we're going to talk about this a little bit more later. But this hybrid system that he's brought in this year, everyone's struggling with it, forwards, defense, but particularly the young defense. So he was asked, are you going to make tweaks? Are you going to make adjustments? Is this the right system for the personnel you have? And he just got more defiant because someone was questioning his judgment. And he's going to double down on this, if anything, well, let's leave that and let's get back to because that requires a more full conversation. This clip, let me just play the first part of this clip again, because there's another piece in this that we need to focus on.
Yeah,
and I'll tell you why I don't listen to stuff, because why would I listen to a critic from somebody I would never go for advice for?
Okay, there's some mixed tenses in there,
but that's okay. That's a language thing.
Yeah. Why would I listen to my critics if I wouldn't go to them for advice? And that's fair. And that was something that he seemed to come up with on his own, unless you've been paying attention. And this, I never thought I would ever do this.
I almost fell out of my chair when I looked at the agenda this morning and saw that you needed me to pull clips on this person.
People know who listen to this show. I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan. Can't stand the Chicago Bears. Cannot stand even more the Green Bay Packers. And have always hated Aaron Rodgers.
You love Aaron Rodgers.
I hate it. Even now he's with the Jets. I can't stand Aaron Rodgers. But
6 months ago.
Yeah. He made. Should I play Marty's quote again?
Play Marty's quote again, and then right after that, Rick is then going to play a clip from an interview that Aaron Rodgers did about 6 months ago when he appeared on a podcast.
All right, here's Marty.
And I'll tell you why I don't listen to stuff, because why would I listen to a critic from somebody I would never go for advice for?
Aaron Rodgers.
You shouldn't worry about criticism from someone that you would never ask advice from.
So, okay, not original. And maybe that's why he had trouble expressing it. It wasn't something that he's thought through, that Marty's thought through, something he picked up, liked, that happened, quite a while ago, and that he could use as a bit of a shield, I think, is the way he used it. To explain why he doesn't pay attention to the noise in Montreal.
And I'm going to say this with the caveat that who knows if Aaron Rodgers was the originator of this thought either. He might have picked it up from someone else either. And if that's the case, then the point I'm about to make applies to both Aaron Rodgers and Marty St. Louis. My point is that it is a pet peeve of mine, and perhaps it's because my work both in hockey and outside of hockey revolves constantly around copyright, intellectual property, copyrighted information, original thought and creativity, and always crediting other sources when you use something that someone else said or wrote or whatever. And it is just a gigantic pet peeve of mine when someone repeats something that they heard someone else say or read somewhere that somebody else wrote, and they don't and who knows, Marty St. Louis might try to say that it was, no, I just came up with this on my own. Okay.
No.
But I would just prefer to have someone say, in response to the question, say to reporters, I actually like to live by something that I actually heard Aaron Rodgers say a little earlier this year in an interview. And he said this. He said, why would I listen to criticism from someone that I would never go to ask advice from? And again, I'm saying Aaron Rodgers might be guilty of this as well. But I just, for me, it says a lot about people in general. There are people who trip over themselves to credit all of the people where they get inspiration from or thoughts or profound statements and things like that. And then there are others that try to take what other people do or say or write and repackage it as their own to take the glory for how wonderful it sounds. And I know that's probably sounds poorly in an opinion about this particular instance, but I think it speaks volumes about what someone is trying to do when that happens. And it's not like Aaron Rodgers is an obscure athlete that probably appeared on an obscure podcast that no one heard.
And let me play, I'm going to make a point here, but again, this pains me, but the more full, the more complete Aaron Rodgers, because I think it's indicative of that he's really thought about this. Let me play a little bit more of Aaron Rodgers.
You shouldn't worry about criticism from someone that you would never ask advice from. And it hit me when I was like 38 years old. It was only a couple years ago. Wish I'd heard that when I was 15, because we care so much about what people think of us and what they say about us. Most of the time, it's people that we would never ask for advice from.
So this is something that whether he originated the quote or not, he has thought an awful lot about. And this actually goes on a couple of minutes. There's no way I was playing a couple of minutes of Aaron Rodgers, but
Fess up. You're starting an Aaron Rodgers podcast.
No. And I think it's difficult for Marty St. Louis. He's come into this role without the experience that you'd expect, and that's made him a little bit insecure. And so that he has to project that he has all the answers. He knows it all. And so I think that's why he's reluctant to point to, sources of knowledge and inspiration. I think that also pertains to the fact that he wants to do everything as the NHL head coach and has been reluctant to surround himself on the bench by experienced people that have that can fill some of the gaps. We were really, Alex Burrows obviously wasn't contributing a lot. And there was an opportunity to add someone, even Stefan Robida. Is he the best defensive coach for the Montreal? Think of what Ken Dryden said. We had the best head coach, Scotty Bowman, and we had the best assistant coach in Claude Ruel. Do the Canadiens have the best assistant coaches? And you'd be hard pressed to imagine maybe Trevor Letowski, but the assistants and the consultant Roger Grohl, that they would be on another NHL bench. And I think that he's reluctant to share that space because that would feels that it would somehow undermine him. I don't know. But he has chosen now to place, the accountability is all, if this fails or succeeds, the accountability is on Marty St. Louis, 100%. And that's a lot of pressure. And I think that this is just a glimpse of what we're going to be seeing throughout the rest of the season, that if things start to go a little sideways, and they have, it's been a bad start, doesn't mean that will continue all season. But if things go sideways, we might see a very different Marty St. Louis than the inspirational one we've seen for the first couple of years.
Well, and we're even, you mentioned that there's been times if he's been criticized or questioned that he's gotten a bit pointed with the media or sharp or a little snarky. But I think we're starting to see him get a bit defensive of the choices that he makes a little more often. You talked about this hybrid defense system that they've employed this season. That let's be honest, so far it's a pure mess. The players are obviously lost. Commentators can't even quite figure it out. Particularly, it's eye-opening when you listen to the opposition's broadcasters and commentators, and they're watching this happen maybe for the first time in a season, and they can't explain what they're seeing in terms of the defense and so forth. Arpon Basu asked Marty about whether or not this is working, and a little bit about comparing it to last year. They focused completely on the forecheck because that was the thing that Marty wanted to fix last year, was the forecheck. And now this year he's focusing on this hybrid defense system. And his response to this reporter is, you can tell that it's getting under his skin a little bit if people are going to start questioning his decisions that he's making as a coach.
Well, you can't fix 5 things at once, So to me, like what I learned from last year is, if you're direct and precise with one topic, there's instant improvement. Now, is it perfect? No, but there's instant improvement. So to me, I'm very confident, and I believe in this group, that we're going to be better tonight in that department. Am I expecting perfection? No. But I'm expecting improvement, and I know we have the guys for that.
So if you're direct, you're precise, and you focus on one topic, you can make some improvements. Now, this seems to be, Florida Panthers use the hybrid system in their own zone, and they won the Stanley Cup. So seeing that, Marty St. Louis, it's a copycat league. Let's do that too. But first of all, do the Canadiens have the right people behind? Is Marty St. Louis the right person to teach this? Is Stefan Robidas this person to teach this? Do they have a good teaching style? Is their message being effectively communicated? Those are all questions. And then the audience that it's going to, you look at these young defensemen, and they've got to adjust playing in the NHL. And I think it was Anthony Martineau that went around the dressing room and said, have you ever played, you played zone, you may have played, you've certainly played man-to-man. Have you ever played in a hybrid system before? Struble said no. Jacques said no. Mailloux said no. Hudson said no. That this was their first exposure to the hybrid system. These are young players. They're having to get used to playing in the NHL, the speed of the game, and the strength of the competition, and as well they're being thrown into a system that they've never had any exposure to before. As has been said, J.F. Houle didn't use the hybrid system in Laval. So those young guys, they haven't had any exposure, those that were in Laval last year. Pascal Vincent is teaching it this season. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if Pascal Vincent exposes the young defenseman in Laval to it this season, then why not implement it in Montreal next season?
Right.
Why is, he says we can only work on one thing at a time. Why is this the thing? Other than you saw it work with Florida, and you said, yeah, it's that's a trendy thing. I want in on that too. And it reminds me of, at the beginning of the season, both Marty and Nick Suzuki in particular, was asked about the fact that there wasn't a whole lot of turnover in the lineup, that there was a lot of continuity. And he said, we like that fact. We like that there's continuity in the lineup. We like that there's continuity in the systems. There's nothing new to learn. We just have to continue to grow and take a big step forward this year. Except that somewhere along the line in training camp, and it was a disjointed training camp, we remember that, it was decided that all of a sudden they'd introduce a new defensive system. And it's not going well. It's really not going well. And like I say, it's even the veterans, David Savard, whether it's age catching up to him or the new system, he's not looking good in the new system. And it's gotten to a point that it was Matheson on Saturday morning in the media availability that said that he and Savard pulled aside the rest of the young defensemen, and they had a meeting. What they talked about, he wouldn't say, but that they wanted to have a supportive meeting because there's been so much said about these young players, and it's kind of, it's unfair. So yes, you can blame the young players, their lack of experience, but you have to feel for them that they haven't had any exposure to the system. And is Marty St. Louis a good teacher? Is he the one that's getting across the message? The example about the forechecking being a problem, and I think Arpin said it came in a game in Boston last year, and afterwards that's the only thing that the Canadiens worked on and fixed it. Well, did it really get fixed? Because we remember just a week or so ago, Marty was saying that he wanted more dump and chase, and that the forecheck wasn't strong enough. There wasn't enough puck retrieval.
So maybe they could still work on that a little bit.
Well, and maybe it isn't, being direct. Maybe the method of teaching isn't working so well. And maybe there was a different way of introducing a brand new system to a bunch of inexperienced defensemen.
And I really take umbrage with the way he started that clip. Listen, you can't fix 5 things at once. I'm sorry, Marty, and this will sound harsh, but this just like sticks in my craw. There are 31 other NHL teams that are trying to fix 8 problems at every practice. You might focus on one thing during one practice, but in the next practice, you're focusing on the next problem. And then practice after that, you're focusing on another weakness. And you're adjusting your practices and what you're focusing on from game to game, because as other things improve, other areas fall short. And so that whole, well, you can't fix 5 things at once just really threw me. Like, okay, that sounds like an excuse to me. And I don't want a coach that's got excuses. I want a coach that says, yeah, you know what? Forecheck was not good last year. We focused on it all last year. And quite frankly, it's still not there. We do have this defensive system that we're working on. We've got to chip away at that. Our face-offs have kind of been trash this year. So maybe that's something we could work on. The power play has finally shown some glimmers of hope, but we still need to work. Like, there's a lot of things to work on. If you're going to spend all season working on one thing at a time, well, then maybe 8 or 9 years from now, you might have everything put together. It wasn't a great answer.
And to go back to Paul Maurice, there was a quote that when he signed the new contract, the Florida Panthers have had a considerable turnover since their Stanley Cup win.
Yeah.
And he said, quote, "The new guys will come in and just be part of the process. We will all learn this. Even though you've gone through lessons before, we'll learn it for the first time together every year. We've got some adversity. The analytics aren't pretty on our game. We've got lots of work to do, but we'll do it all together." And to that, when that was relayed to one of his players said, he knows what we need at every moment. Saying that, he's a nimble coach. He can react, he can change, he can make adjustments, and he's effective at communicating that. Now, maybe that's not, Marty's good at inspiration, at motivation, and maybe the teaching, developing the tactics, preparing the game plan, and teaching specific systems would be better handled by a more experienced coach, particularly one that knows the ins and outs of the defensive game. We're not saying that. And I think there was some commentary that came out that is Marty St. Louis run his course in Montreal. I don't think that's the case now, but I think that he needs help. And it was easy for him to cruise along, and when no one had any expectations. But now that there's expectations, I think he needs some help in the strategic, tactical part of the game, as well as the teaching side.
I agree. And I think this is going to be a bit of a crossroads season for St. Louis. It's early. It is still early in the season. There are some injury issues that the Canadiens weren't expecting to have to deal with again. But you could say that for any NHL franchise. The next 2 months or so are going to be a big deal, I think, for the Canadiens and for St. Louis. And I think that we'll see how things progress, not only with the on-ice performance, but with the behind-the-bench performance as well. So our Canadiens Connection question of the week: it has been a relatively smooth ride for Marty St. Louis so far in his tenure as an NHL coach. So we want to know how you think he's handling his first real taste of pressure, hearing those first bits and bobs of criticism or naysayers, doubters, that type of thing. How do you think he's handling this first bit of adversity in terms of the feedback that he's getting from the Montreal market. Be sure to either send us a text, 5853-ROCKET, answer us on social media. You can send a message at Habs Connection. You can leave a comment on our YouTube channel under the video, or you can join the conversation on our forum on Hockey Buzz and let us know your answer there as well. We will be very curious to see how you're feeling about how Marty's handling his first taste of coaching adversity. All right, we're going to take our final break here on the Canadiens Connection. Next up, we have got some great comments from all of you on last week's question of the week, plus some other fun news that we want to bring to you, so you don't want to miss a minute of it. Stay with us. You are listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast right here on Rocket Sports Radio.
There's nothing quite like opening night for the NHL season, right? Or even opening weekend for that matter. The excitement, the anticipation, all of the things that you love about hockey season finally back after a long summer and after a bunch of preseason games that maybe weren't exactly thrilling to watch. And while getting back to watching Habs games on TV most nights of the week is pretty fun, it's even better when you can experience the Canadiens live. Whether they're at home at the Bell Center or on the road, Game Time will have you covered this season to get you the best opportunities for great deals on seats to see your favorite NHL team live. Game Time sets itself apart from other third-party ticket sellers in a lot of ways. You're going to filter out all the fluff with the Game Time app, and you're just going to get incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste a lot of time sifting through thousands of ticket offers on other apps. So let's just take a look here. The Pittsburgh Penguins are playing at the Bell Center on Monday night, and I'm just taking a look at their interactive ticket map, and I'm seeing that ticket prices on Game Time are starting at $62. I'm even seeing, though, if you want to get down in the reds, there are tickets under $200 down in the reds, and I'm talking like in the lower third of the reds. There are some great deals. What else do I love about the app? Oh, seat views before you buy. If there is one thing that I am obsessive about when I'm buying tickets for a hockey game or even for concerts and shows and things like that, which Game Time also has tickets available for, I want to know, particularly if it's at a venue that I'm not necessarily familiar with, like say I'm checking out a Habs game on the road, I want to know exactly what my view from my seat is going to look like. And Game Time, its app, has a really cool feature that you get a panoramic example of what your seat that you're looking at purchasing will look like before you get to buy it. Lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection. They even have a feature that you can toggle on their app called all-in pricing, which shows the complete total to buy the tickets up front, including any taxes and fees and things like that, so that you don't get any surprises at checkout when you think, oh, well, let me just buy these tickets for $100, and then you go to checkout and it ends up costing you $180 or something like that. You know, you're going to get all-in pricing right up front. Lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Love that. And ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets, whether it's for the NHL or for a concert or a show. Take the guesswork out of buying those tickets with Game Time picks. And we've got a great incentive for our listeners. Thanks to the folks over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. It's free. It's simple. All you have to do is punch in your email address. I just did it today. And use code THPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code THPN for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
And Welcome back to episode 319 of the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. Don't forget, follow at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And be sure you subscribe to this podcast or our YouTube channel. That's the great thing. If you're listening on a podcast app, you can, of course, subscribe to the podcast, but then also go over to our YouTube channel, InsideTheCanadiens.com, and hit subscribe over there as well. All right. In this third segment, just a reminder on where you can find all of our coverage all week long, in addition to those social media accounts. InsideTheCanadiens.com takes you to our YouTube channel, which, of course, this past Monday, our most recent episode of the Canadiens Connection was posted there. 5 up, 5 down, the good and bad of the Canadiens' first 5 games. It was a really fun show last week. We've got some great comments coming up about that. Also, be sure, in case you missed the news, starting this season, we are the new content providers of Montreal Canadiens content on Hockey Buzz. And so just head over to hockeybuzz.com, click on the Canadiens logo in the banner at the top of the page. That takes you right to our Canadiens coverage. And you'll find articles from Rick, from myself, from Chris G. And it's a great place to find our written content about the Canadiens as well. We've had a lot of fun posting on that site already in the first couple of weeks of the season and getting to know everyone. The fun thing about Hockey Buzz is it is also a forum-based site, so lots of conversation between lots of fans happening, and that's a lot of fun to jump into. Don't forget, of course, to subscribe to the podcast. And if you are listening, perhaps some not in a podcast app, you can head over to CanadiensConnection.fm and you'll be able to select from all of the different podcast apps and platforms that we appear on. Find the one that you like the best, and you can subscribe that way. And so don't forget, send us a text. We want to hear from you about this week's Canadiens Connection question of the week. It's been a smooth ride for Marty St. Louis so far in his NHL head coaching tenure. And we want to know how you think he's doing handling this first little bit of adversity, criticism, and pressure that he's starting to get in the early weeks of this season. Send us a message, and as we do every week, we will definitely select a handful of really good responses to read on next week's show. Speaking of which, last week we had the 5 up, 5 down, which Habs are thriving and who's struggling. And we had a couple of, I just spoke about how active readers are on the Hockey Buzz site. And we had some great feedback. We've had great feedback so far from a lot of our readers over there, just about the different kinds of content that we're offering. There's 2 in particular I wanted to read. First, Chris had his weekly Laval Notepad article out early, I believe it was on Tuesday, and the Judge replied to that and said, "Thanks for this. There are only so many hours in a day, and I don't keep as updated on Laval as I'd like. Thanks again." And Rick, I just wanted to point that one out because A, we appreciate that. B, Chris does a great job with his weekly Laval Notepad. And Chris replied and said, "Oh, you're welcome. Amy and I are here to bring you all the Laval news." And that's true because I also do a weekly in-depth Laval Rocket review on our YouTube channel. And that's really the reason that we do it, is because it's one thing for most fans to keep up with their NHL team. It's another thing altogether to really keep tabs on the AHL as well. And I think fans know how important the AHL is in terms of prospects. And so that's the kind of feedback we love to hear, that people understand the value of us bringing that kind of information and coverage. And also, Pat 1993 said, "Hey, I like the 5 up, 5 down format, by the way. Good concept. Good job with the podcast overall." So that was a shout out to you, Rick, who came up with the 5 up, 5 down. And I think you mentioned to him that you're going to keep that in the back pocket.
Yeah, I think so. And because we had a lot of great comments, we're focusing here on the comments on Hockey Buzz, and we appreciate all of our new community that our content's be exposed to. And we thought, we got comments on Facebook and YouTube and by email. We're going to read that. I'm going to read that in a minute, but we're very happy with our new Hockey Buzz community and wanted to feature some of those comments.
Absolutely. Once in a while, though, we also get an email, and people do ask if I want to, maybe I want to send you a longer comment. How can I email you? And they can do that at hello@rocketsportsmedia.com, correct?
That's correct. Okay. Hello@rocketsportsmedia.com for an email. Of course, you can always send it to 585-3-ROCKET. Shorter messages by text. This one comes all the way from St. Petersburg, Russia. Who plays in St. Petersburg, Russia? Well, Ivan Demidov and his team, SKA. We hear occasionally from Leonid in St. Petersburg, and he thought he would write about the title. The subject line in his email is Ivan's Saga. So let me read. This is a very detailed email, and thank you to Leonid for sending it, especially the first-hand accounts. He says, hello, I want to thank your entire team for their excellent work during the off-season and congratulate you on expanding to the new platform. I hope that the new season will bring new listeners and readers to Rocket Sports and many hockey discoveries for all of us. I'd like to add a couple of things to the discussion of the Ivan saga. However, let's start with hockey itself. I'm not a fan of SKA at all, but I couldn't miss a chance to see the young talent in person. Luckily, he plays for the team, and talking about Demidov here, the team from my city. Ivan has excellent hands and technique, but his inclusion in the game sometimes raises questions. When you watch video, it's not necessarily noticeable, but watching from the stands, it's obvious that from time to time, the young player simply switches off. It's unlikely that the problem is in physical form, since Demidov does not spend much time on the ice. Sometimes he plays on his own island. However, when you're young and play almost every game with different partners, it's hard to be part of a team's combinational game. Now, this whole situation seems to be motivating Demidov. This makes me happy. This guy has character. But what will happen to his time remains the same if his ice time remains the same in December. Will motivation turn to frustration? In those moments when Ivan turns on, he demonstrates flashes of hockey IQ, and this, in my opinion, is the most inspiring part of the young Russian's game. The pressure on a hockey player is big. The club wants to keep him for as long as possible, and this situation cannot be resolved through compensation or negotiations. And we've heard that the team has approached Demidov 3 times trying to extend his contract. Leonid goes on, as for the coach's words, they should be taken in context. I'm not trying to defend Roman Rotenberg. I'm just trying to give some context. In Russia now, everything that comes from the West is automatically wrong. Doesn't matter if it's music, news, or sports. Public figures have to condemn everything and everyone just in case. Besides, we're not just talking about a coach, but about a person from a family who's close to President Putin. He goes on to talk about the political situation and concludes, people in a world divided strictly into friends and foes, and the hockey community is no exception. Considering the above, the words of public figures from Russia should be considered white noise, especially in this case. We should look at the time that Ivan will spend on the ice. His time is growing, although not significantly. You can't hide the fox in the box for long. SKA is going for the cup, and in important games, the coach will be forced to let the young player out on the ice in order to keep his job and not lose the locker room. To sum up, says Leonid, I will give my forecast. This year will be like a roller coaster for Demidov in every sense, and next year we will see him in North America. These are my thoughts on the topic, with warm greetings from St. Petersburg, your friend Leonid. And what a great email, and thank you for that. And thank you for the firsthand report, and thank you for giving the context that, there's a little more to consider, and we have to consider that, the politics comes into it and the different culture and everything that surrounds the KHL and this team.
Absolutely. And we appreciate, we, as I've said, we love to hear from all of our listeners, whether it's just a sentence or it's a saga, like Leonid wanted to share with us this week. Thank you so much. All right. If you were disappointed that, you had to wait for so long in between games this week, well, have no fear, because there are 4 happening between now and the next time we get together for a Canadiens Connection episode. The St. Louis Blues will visit the Bell Center on Saturday night, tonight. Then the Canadiens hop on a plane and head down to Philadelphia for a Sunday night game against the Flyers. So back-to-back games, one at home, one on the road.
Primo in that game in Philadelphia.
Gee, I wonder why.
Yeah.
Then on Tuesday night, it's back to the Bell Center to welcome the Seattle Kraken for the first time this season. And finally, on Halloween, Thursday night, Montreal will be in the United States national capital, the Washington, D.C., to take on the Capitals on Halloween night on the 31st. So a packed week for the Canadiens, not only game-wise, but home, then away, then home, then away. So there's the travel and whatnot in there as well. Short trips, but it still is a disruption. So we'll see how they can handle these 4 games. Marty put up big words today that he expects to see some improvement tonight after Tuesday night's game. So we'll see if that happens. You can be sure that when we get together again next Saturday, November 2nd, for the next episode of the Canadiens Connection podcast, we're going to break it all down for you. And I guarantee we're going to have a lot to talk about. So don't forget to subscribe. We don't want you to miss that episode or any future episodes. Have a happy Halloween to you, all of you, including you, Rick.
And to you as well.
Thank you so much. Hope you get many more tricks as opposed to treats. And it's a treat.
More tricks than treats? More
treats.
treats.
You know what I'm saying. I hope you get a lot more treats than tricks. See, I haven't eaten enough Reese's peanut butter cups today. My sugar's low. I hope you have a lot more treats than tricks. It's a treat for us that all of you come here and tune into the Canadiens Connection podcast each week. We thank you for listening, and we'll see you again next week right here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @Rocket Sports.